All right, interview time again, Michael. This time we have a very large man who at one point in his career actually played with an entire club over his hand, which I got to imagine is tough, particularly because he's a defensive lineman. He started at UCF in 2017, wrapped up his last season here in 2022. A big part of the Knights defense and an overall nice guy to know. Mr. Anthony Montalvo Jr. is our guest on the show this evening. Do you like to be called Anthony, Tony, Monty? What do you want us to call you?
You can just call me Anthony.
Anthony it is. All right, Anthony Montalvo Jr. has officially joined us on the show. So first off, man, hope all is well. Thank you for taking some time to hop on the show with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start here. I'd like to ask this question off the gate. How did you end up at UCF, right? You're a kid. If I read correctly, you're from New York, from that area. You moved down to Tampa, and then you decide to come to UCF. How did that all happen for you?
I had met a coach, Coach Shank. He came here. He's an alumni. He played for the Vikings, and he's a big UCF guy. He loves UCF. And I went to we had an East-West bowl, for high school my senior year, and I met him, and he kind of just brought me to UCF and got in contact with some of the coaches. So I got a PWO to come here.
Yeah, so you came as a walk-on, correct? So how was that choice? Did you have any offers outside of UCF to maybe get scholarship-wise? How'd you decide to come to UCF as a walk-on versus maybe taking an offer someplace else?
So I didn't have any big D1 offers. I had NAIA, maybe Division III. I think I had one Division II that was up north. I wanted to stay in Florida. So when Coach Shank came and showed me UCF and they offered me a PW, it was kind of like a no-brainer that I wanted to stay. I knew that I can play in a Division I league. So, I chose UCF.
You came on you were on the scout team in 2017, obviously the perfect season. We said the same question to Daryl Mack last week. What was that like? Going through that whole season, first year in college football?
First year, I kind of expected, I wasn't expecting to make a huge impact. Obviously, as a walk-on, they don't know who I am. So I knew I was going to be on a scout team. I had a couple players that, went to college before I did, and I talked to them. And, I understood my role, and that was the biggest thing, was kind of just coming in and, putting my role, putting the team first, which was on scout team. So it was fun. 2017, we had a lot of fun. It's not as grueling as, some people say it can be, when you only have 3 defensive linemen rotating in and there's no breaks. But, the offensive line, they know and they take care of you and you guys take care of each other. So that's the best thing.
I'm sure that worked out with the ladies at least, right? You tell them you're on the football team as a freshman, the team's undefeated. That couldn't hurt.
Personally, I'm not, I didn't really do any of that. I'm a quiet kid. I sit in the back of the class, I get my homework done, and I leave. When you have Mackenzie Milton, that's all who they focus on. They were I can't do that for you.
That's fair.
All right, but in 2018, coaching changes, right? So Heupel comes in. You walked on under Frost. Now all of a sudden, new head coach. Are you concerned? Maybe, hey, do I still have a spot on this team?
Yeah, I was concerned. Obviously, that it's my first time that's happened. I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't kind of expecting anything, or just kind of just going with the flow and seeing what was going on and seeing what was happening. I just knew that I needed to at least show them hey, I can play. Get my name out there and tell them, hey, keep me around. That was the biggest thing.
Obviously, a lot of success in 2017. 2018 was just as good, right? We go undefeated regular season, go to the Fiesta Bowl. But how are those teams different, Anthony? Obviously, different staffs, different styles of play. How are those two teams different if you compare 2017 to 2018?
I would have to say player-wise, 2017 was just different. The guys had this switch where, they can play around, they can mess around, and then that switch turned on where it was time to work. 2018, I felt like there was still there was a switch there from the guys that, played in that 2017 team. But obviously, things get out of hand sometimes with kids playing around, not paying attention, But like you said, we went undefeated, so it worked. It's just a different methodology that went into it.
All right, name names. Who was the class clown then? Who was the guy who's always getting caught?
Oh, man. D-line wise, we had it was the freshman that came in that kind of, I don't want to name names, but there was a couple freshmen that came in that were the class clowns, trying to make a name.
Okay. All right, I'll search up 2018 freshman in a second here. One of the biggest changes, obviously, that year is new defensive coordinator and Randy Shannon. He brings a different style system. How would you describe Randy Shannon? He didn't really talk to the media. It didn't seem like he was one who really enjoyed talking to the media. So we didn't get to know him very well. Obviously, he had a pedigree coming from Miami and Florida before that. Describe Randy Shannon for those of us who never really got a chance to know him, understand him.
Meeting him, obviously he's a quiet guy, but he's very like straightforward. So he's going to tell you, what you need to hear, which is always great. In every sports, team, you need somebody like that. His play calling was, I don't want to be vulgar, but, hanging nuts out there was kind of his, play calling where, he's going to blitz you. He's going to do it every time. You're going to know it's coming and he's going to tell you need to stop it, which is, if you have the players, it's perfect. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest thing. Obviously, like you said, he wasn't, talking to the media, but he talked to the players a lot, kept everything in-house, which is also great.
Did you like that style, that hang your nuts out there and go blitz? Was that something that as a defender that you were like, all right, this is me, I can roll with this?
Oh yeah. As a defender, like depending on the position, he was the linebackers coach, but he also he kept the D-line in mind. You have some defensive coordinators that, they're around their position. He was more oriented around the D-line. So obviously, with the play calling, he kept us in mind, and that was a perfect thing for us.
I know the offense was quick under Frost, but when Heupel comes in, it's that much faster. You're going up against these guys in practice every day. Did you hate that, going up against that every day? How bad was practice under Heupel?
It definitely was. It was bad. The 2017 offense, I was on scout team, so it was a little slower, obviously, during the season for them. So say spring ball with Coach Heupel, it sucked. Being inside the stadium where it's close to 90-something degrees or 80-something degrees, and then they're doing fastball. It got you out of breath. You know what I mean?
Did you ever? I know that happened a lot against us during games. Fake injuries in practice. You ever just go down and say you got a cramp or something, slow things down?
During practice, there's been times where I was thinking about it where I could fall right here and just kind of catch my breath. I'm a very prideful person, so I kind of just sucked it up and just kept going. You know what I mean?
All right, so you started getting a lot of playing time there. In 2018, you played in 7 games that year. What was the biggest difference for you going from high school now playing Division I college?
I think the speed was the biggest difference. Going from high school, playing with guys that are around my size or maybe even a little smaller who didn't get D1 offers and stuff like that, who are still good. It's just the speed. Obviously with Heupel's offense, it's fast. High school, you don't have that. Running backs being able to split in the holes and get through and get out, quarterbacks being able to move, it's a lot different. But you adjust over time.
Do you have any moment in practice where you said, oh crap, somebody hit you differently and you said, man, this is not high school anymore?
So 2017, I had, it's kind of like a welcoming present from the offensive lineman where I was running downfield and kind of gave me a little crackback, but it wasn't like a illegal crackback. I just wasn't paying attention, kind of ran into him basically, and I was like, oh crap, this is college ball, you know what I mean? I wasn't expecting that at the time.
Did you ever plan revenge on that offensive lineman? Do you want to name him now? Do you plan revenge to get back at him at some point? Maybe a little hook and hold, maybe grab something you're not supposed to while you're on the line?
I tried to, but he was a lot bigger than me. You know what I mean? Especially as a freshman, I came in at 265, and he was 6'3", maybe 300 pounds. So it was hard to get revenge.
All right. Well, 2019 comes around, and you after working hard for a couple of years, you cracked a starting lineup, right? You get named a starter. You get a chance to kind of be out there. What do you think the coaches saw in you that you got that opportunity? What do you think you proved them, or how did you kind of carry yourself to make sure you got that opportunity?
I carried myself just being consistent. All the coaches kept telling me the same thing, that you just had to be consistent. We had players that were great. They understood the playbook. So just me being, I don't want to say less talented or anything like that, but not on par with some of them. Because you had Kalia Davis. Kalia Davis is a monster. You had KT. He's a monster. So you had a bunch of guys in front of me that were just great players. I just had to show my own role. Hey, I'm consistent. I can make plays. I'm here when you need me, and if you need this play done, I can do it. So.
Did you have a chip on your shoulder? Did that kind of cause you a little bit of a chip?
Yeah. Getting 2018, getting some playing time and feeling okay, I really want to play, and then seeing, everybody compete, obviously you naturally put a chip on your shoulder. You want to play, you want to, make sure you're the guy, you know what I mean?
Well, 2019 also produces a viral video. Everyone's seen it now, hopefully, of you getting put on full scholarship, right? The team mobs you. They throw water on you. Really cool moment. I love seeing those kind of videos. But tell us about what was life like as a walk-on? How much different is it? I mean, I know obviously there's difference in terms of scholarships and opportunities available to you. How different is it as a walk-on versus being a scholarship player?
So There's a couple differences. Obviously, I'm paying for school as a walk on. Our GPAs are different. You know what I mean? So I got to maintain a higher GPA. Every school does that. I think the biggest issue is just feeding yourself. You don't get fed. Sometimes the teams, the coaches will help you out. I had, a bunch of coaches bring me food, from the nutritional center. But, I think the biggest thing is just doing everything on your own and then going and practicing. There isn't, a lot that scholarship players have. There's like a couple differences, and those are really the main differences. Other than that, like being part of the team, like they welcome you. You're a part of the team. You're not separate. It's just paying for things. That's the biggest difference. It's hard.
Well, so as an athlete, how do you keep your weight up? How do you keep yourself conditioned when, to your point, you're not getting maybe the same meal plan or the same nutritional guidance as some of the scholarship guys are?
That you got to plan for that. So what I did personally, my parents, they helped me out. They would give me $100 a week at least, or maybe $50 a week. And I would go to Walmart. And this is one time when, groceries weren't as expensive as that. But, I would go to Walmart and I would cook for the whole week. So I would go there, I'll buy, what I can, make quick meals, especially when you have classes. You may have 2 classes a day. You may not have classes all week. But what I would do, as soon as I'm done working out, they would give us shakes. I would go home, I would cook, relax, cook again. So it's just constantly cooking, and you could meal prep. I wasn't one to really try to meal prep. I tried it, didn't work out. So I just kind of just cooked every day.
What was the go-to? Tuna sandwiches? A lot of tuna sandwiches?
No. So peanut butter and jelly. Those are the go-to. Ramen was the go-to. But I also I did fish and rice. It was really simple. You just kind of put it on the skillet for two minutes each side, and then you're pretty much done. So.
Wow. You should put a cookbook out one of these days, Anthony. You should get the walk-on cookbook out there. Maybe make a couple dollars off that.
That's a good idea, honestly.
All right. As a defensive lineman, you see these guys running in and off the field all the time. It looks like chaos. But you guys, is it scripted? Do you know going into the game, okay, I'm going to play in the second quarter? Or is it kind of like series to series kind of thing where you guys figure it out on the fly?
It's a series of series. The starters, if you're not a starter, they started off, with Coach Malzahn. The starters will start off the first 2 series, and after that, we rotated in. With Coach Burnham and Coach Heupel, it was just a series thing. He kind of just threw you in wherever and whenever. Just whenever he felt like it, or whenever he saw a D tackle get tired, just we had a little signal where we could tap our helmet, tap our hip, or just kind of look at him like, "Hey, coach, I'm exhausted. I need a little break."
Yeah. All right. That 2019 season, 3 really tough losses: Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Tulsa. I mean, every one of them I want back. If you had to only pick one right now, which one would you want to play over again?
Cincinnati. I felt like I felt like I had a decent game against Cincinnati, and I felt like I just kind of put everything out there, and I really wanted that win really badly against Cincinnati, especially, going to them, beating them on their field. So I think that's the biggest thing.
The defense played pretty well that night. I mean, they scored a defensive touchdown on us. You guys didn't give up that many points. The offense was kind of, I think, what let us down that day.
I mean, not pointing fingers, but, sometimes has to pick up, some slack, and offense has to pick up some slack. I just wish the defense could have, we could have did a little more just to help the offense. It happens. It's football.
Well, how do you explain Tulsa, though? I don't know. I still don't know what happened in that game.
I'm trying to figure it out. I guess they were just better prepared. You got to give them props. You know what I mean? You can't downplay them. They were a really good team. They had a really good offensive lineman, or not offensive lineman, excuse me. They had a really good offensive line all together. They were well organized. The O-line knew when we were moving, you know what I mean? So that kind of played into it. They knew our playbook. So, not saying they had our playbook, but, they studied our film, so they knew what we were going to run.
All right, your first 2 years in college football, Anthony, you lose 1 game total, right? Obviously, we lose 3 games in that 2019 season. Was there any part of you that was disappointed? Were you kind of man, I thought I was just going to win them all forever? Was there some part of you that was man, I can't believe I actually lost 3 whole games this season?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say yes. We kind of got complacent a little bit, talking to the guys that were there for 2017 as well. We didn't expect we were going to win all of them. You know what I mean? Obviously, we wanted to win all of them. We're going in confident, but losing it was kind of a wake-up call. Okay, this is the reality of football that, there are winners and there are losers, and you just, it happens.
as one of the guys who was there in 17 and 18, right? Obviously, by the time 19 and 20 and 21 roll around, I mean, those guys cycle out, right? You're the old head at that point, right? How much pressure did you and some of those guys feel to try to keep that like culture alive, to keep that mentality alive when you walk in the locker room in 2019 and, you know, half the team is different than they were the year before, right? And 75% weren't there in 2017. How did you try to keep that culture alive, even though, you know, you and only a handful of guys were part of those 18 and 17 years?
So, I mean, that's a good question. It's kind of hard to keep that culture alive as guys cycle through. You know, everybody has their different personality. Everybody has their, you know, different beliefs and stuff like that on how a team should be run. Obviously, with 3 coaching staffs, you know what I mean? You know, every coach had their different way of coaching and different way of handling situations. I felt like there wasn't a lot of pressure, honestly, just because that 2017, 2018 team, the guys that came in that 2019 team, they're like, okay, you know, they went undefeated. They only lost 1 game. I want to be like that. So let's just kind of buy in. Obviously, as time goes on, you know, the mojo or everything just shifts and changes. But, you know, it was me, say Alex Ward, Sam Jackson, you know, kind of the old heads that were there. So, I mean, you can ask them the same question, and I feel like they kind of answer in a similar way where, you know, it just changes, it shifts. You know, sometimes, you know, being the old head isn't the best way, you know what I mean? It's the old way. Sometimes you just have to adapt to a new way.
Well, 2020 obviously is such a unique year for a lot of reasons. But the COVID-19 pandemic hits, and obviously you all kind of play through a pandemic. When you think back on what you all had to do to play in 2020, is there something about that you just like shake your head that you're like, man, I can't believe we went through that, or that was the hardest part about playing that season?
The hardest part was getting tested. I hated getting tested. It was we got tested twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, just depending on when the game was and, you know, what team it was. You know, not having fans, obviously, in certain stadiums, that was new. You know what I mean? You're so used to having, you know, fans screaming and you're hearing noise, and now you're not hearing anything but grunting and pads colliding, which was, it. You know, it's kind of refreshing in certain sense, like the first couple of games, but after that, it did get, you know, kind of boring where it's like, you know what I mean? You can't really hear anything. You can't really hear the cheering, and, you know, you don't have that, you know, adrenaline pumping like you used to.
So you said you hated testing. You had to do the nasal swab, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't your thing?
Nah, it was not my thing.
Did you any tears? Like what happened when, you know, was it kind of like, you know, being afraid of a needle where you like, oh my goodness, get this thing out of my nose?
The first one, like I had some tears, you know what I mean? And then after that, you kind of get used to it. But then, you know, with the nursing, we had like 3 or 4 nurses there. They would change shifts. So like, you know, you had to pick which one you wanted to go to, you know what I mean? So I had, you know, one lady that I would go to always because she always took care of me and she was always very gentle. So that's the person I went to.
So that's the real MVP of that season, right? Is the gentle lady in the COVID test.
She was. She had the longest line every time.
Was it every day you guys were getting tested?
Not every day. I want to say it was twice or 3 times a week. I think they wanted to do the everyday testing like when it first came out, but a lot of us we just weren't there at the time, you know, because you had that 2 or 3 months off when COVID hit. And then that's when information started flowing in on when we need to test and stuff like that.
Even like workout, was it tough for, like, if I remember correctly, you guys were like segregated in pods for workouts, right? So it wasn't the whole team. Was that tough? Like you're lifting with the same 4 guys, you can't be near anybody. Like, did that kind of kill a little bit of, you said the word mojo earlier, right? But sometimes in the weight room, it's competitive, right? You see a dude, you know, squat, you know, 325, right? You want to get 350. Was it different just being around the same guys every day doing kind of the same stuff?
Yeah, it definitely was. You know what I mean? Especially like we came in waves. I came in the first wave. So we only had, I want to say maybe 35 people at the time, you know what I mean, trying to work out, trying to get back into conditioning because we just had, you know, 2 or 3 months off, you know, and then having to clean everything after, you know, the weight room and stuff like after using the weight room, especially when we're running, you're not allowed to be next to somebody, you know what I mean? You had to have a mask on at certain times or when you're close, you know, closer than 6 feet. So, you know, trying to like compete is kind of hard when you look over and the guy's, you know, 3 racks down, you can't see what weight he's doing, you know what I mean? It was different, you know, but you know, we had fun. We still had fun during it. So
the one game from that season that really drove me nuts was the Memphis game. 50 points. I know it must have drove you nuts as a defensive guy. We got up 50 points that day. Dylan, I think, accounted for like 700 total yards. We put up 49, and somehow I know we missed a kick at the end. We had a chance to win it still, but as a defensive guy, how much did that bother you?
it bothered me a lot. You know what I mean? We never want to have a close scoring game. You know, we want to take the pressure off the offense the best we can. You know what I mean? And they just outperformed us. I mean, I know we missed a kick, but it should never came down to just a kick. You know what I mean? Like we should have stopped them. That's just my opinion.
And then later in that year, there's that night where 6, 7 guys on defense get in trouble. You know, they get pulled over, end up getting kicked off the team. How much did that change everything for the team, especially the defensive guys in that defensive room for you going forward for the rest of the year? How different was it after that?
It was definitely different. Obviously, we lost, some star players, some key players to our defense. Our coach was kind of like, next man up, which is, it's a business, it happens. He was trying to help them the best he can, but he always told us that this is real life. Stuff like this happens. You just got to keep moving forward. We still have a season to continue, and the guys aren't going to want you to stop just for them. Talking to them, they kind of said the same thing. They were sorry that it happened. I don't know the whole story about it, and I heard there's a video. I didn't watch the video just personally. I just didn't want to, get myself involved, or not involved, but, get into it. I just kind of left it alone. I told them that if they need anything, I'm here for them. But they were all great guys, great players. I know, Randy, he went to Mississippi State, so it worked out for him. Kenny went to TCU. So a lot of players, they went to, you can consider better places for them. I know Randy, he had a great year. Same thing with Kenny. So, God works in mysterious ways, and, it happened for a reason, and they're all kind of thriving now. So
you guys were not supposed to be going out at all, right? Obviously, because of the COVID stuff. You can tell us now, how much was, like, every once in a while you guys get out, you go to a bar, you go to a party, stuff like that?
Personally, I don't go out. I was just never one to go out. I've been, players try to drag me out. I'm not in that setting. But yeah, players that go out, you're in college. You're going to have fun. Kids are going to want to go out. They're going to want to hang out. Obviously I'm sure they, try to do their best to, keep it safe. You know what I mean? But you're a college, a college student. You're never going to be a college student again. You want to just go hang out. You want to have fun, especially after a win. You know what I mean? Or even after a loss, you just, want some company around you to kind of talk and relax,
The crazy thing was, I think we played our best defensive game of the season like 2 days later against Houston, right? I don't know how to explain that one.
I think everybody was kind of just, I don't want to say angry, but kind of had a chip on their shoulder that, we just lost a couple players. They're brothers. You know what I mean? Like, you never want that to happen. You know what I mean? Like, if they can go back, I'm sure they can try to make different decisions. And I'm sure, coaches can do something different. Players that were there can grab them. You know what I mean? It's whatever it may be. You know what I mean? They're all brothers to us, no matter what happens. You know what I mean?
Anthony, Mike and I actually went down to Boca for the Boca Bowl against BYU, which obviously did not go in our favor that day. But when you look back at that 2020 season, was there a sense of just like exhaustion after a while? Like, man, like everything we've been through, truncated schedule, all the COVID restrictions. Obviously, Mike just talked about some of the internal stuff. As that season wore on, were you all just exhausted? Like, man, just get this season over with already, because it'd been such a long, mentally and physically exhausting year.
I think so, yeah. Especially with like there not being fans involved, and having to test so much. You had the internal affairs that were going on, and games being canceled. The unsure, not being unsure. Being unsure. If you could play the games, if you're not playing the games. Having to quarantine for a certain amount of days. It was mentally and physically exhausting. So I think BYU was a great team. Quarterback was really good. O-line was really experienced, and they were just ready, and I get we just weren't. So
yeah, I kind of wish we got the Zach Wilson at the Jets, not the Zach Wilson that played at BYU that night. Been a lot easier. All right, but there's like a fan conspiracy theory, Anthony, and I want you to give us your opinion on this. A lot of fans outside looking in said, obviously, when Heupel got hired, the exact same day, if people remember, Heupel got announced as the head coach. Randy Shannon got announced as a defensive coordinator, right? Danny White, the AD at the time, made both those hires concurrently. I don't know if Josh and Randy knew each other. I don't know if Josh picked Randy as a defensive coordinator, right? But there was always conspiracy theories that there was like a split between the team. There was the offensive guys and there was the defensive guys. And essentially there was a head coach on defense, a head coach on offense. Was that any part of that true based on your experience? Did any part of that actually ring true in terms of what it is that you saw in the locker room, on the field, and practice and all that stuff?
I can say yes and no. Just because, as a defensive guy, I hate offensive linemen. I love them, but I hate them. So there's a split there where they win a rep, I'm gonna get mad, I'm gonna want to fight them, but I'm not going to. Depending, maybe we'll see. But I mean, if they're looking at that, then yes, there is a split where I'm a defensive guy. I want the defense to thrive. I want us to do the best. I want the offense to do the best when it's game time, but sometimes I'm gonna look at them and be like, hey, what are you doing? This isn't you. As far as coaching, I felt like they were communicating. I felt like they were all around great. They communicate with each other. They might talk crap, in the locker room, in their own locker room to each other. I wasn't there to kind of, see what was going on. But for the most part, I would say no, that there wasn't really a split. Maybe between players, yeah, they could have been a split, because obviously you have DBs and wide receivers. They're always going to be a split there. Those guys, they talk the most, But when we're in the locker room, we're all family, so.
You saw another coaching change, 2021. Gus Malzahn comes in. What's the biggest difference now going from Heupel to Gus?
Gus is very, I want to say he's old school. He's, he's kind of the pound the rock type of guy, where he's going to, have a dive back and he's just going to keep going. He wants to run the ball. I felt like Heupel, you kind of more oriented towards the wide receivers than Gus. I felt like Gus was more in the run game. But other than that, sorry about that. My dad was calling.
You're good.
But, yeah, Gus was more oriented around the run game. And that's pretty much it. There's two different personalities. Heupel coming in, he was very, talkative and stuff like that, but he was also very quiet. Like he knew what he had to say. He got out. Gus is he could talk. He can put you on a spiel about what he wants getting done. So I feel like that may be a difference there too.
What about in the defensive room? You go from Randy Shannon now to Travis Williams. What are the biggest differences between those guys?
Oh, man, that's a good one. Randy Shannon, like I said, hanging nuts out to dry. He wants to blitz. He wants to go. I feel like, our defense coordinator, he kind of tried to do the same thing, but he was kind of more reservative in certain areas. I felt like we were just a little more aggressive in 2019 and 2020 compared to the 2021 and 2022 season.
You think that's a lot to do with personnel, or maybe it's just he was trying to implement a new system and maybe things were new to you guys, or why do you think he did that?
I feel like there could be plenty, a plethora of factors that, kind of play into it, where we just may have not had the personnel to be as aggressive as he wanted. It could be, it's a new system, so it takes a little bit longer to kind of get used to it. New coaching, obviously, so it's different, methods that they want you to do. So, it could be anything. You would have to ask him, yourself for that one, because I couldn't answer for him.
2021 starts off crazy game at Boise. He doesn't enter like 2 a.m, right? And then we turn around and we're at Louisville, and we've talked to a bunch of guys who played that game, and everyone has said they've never seen that many people get injured in one game in their entire life, right? Obviously, a lot of impact on the defensive side of the ball, impact on the line when Ricky Barber goes out. You guys are moving around everywhere, but Louisville just had. They ran all over us that day. What were they doing specifically that Malik Cunningham may still be running right now? I'm not sure. What were they doing specifically that they were able to just gash us on the ground that night?
Look, Malik is an athlete. Like, he can move. Obviously they had me play in that game. We just, we had different stuff going on. He knew I was playing defensive end. You got me at 290 playing defensive end. He's going to run my way. They're going to try to do stretch. So the only thing I could do is try to turn, everything back inside and hope, either KD, Ricky, or somebody's there to kind of stop it. KD had a hell of a game. You know what I mean? It's just, I couldn't really tell you exactly what was going on, but, they were just quick. They were fast. They're primarily a stretch team. So I think we just didn't get used to them running, east and west. We're so used to people running north and south that, going against them was just different.
So in that game, why were you moved out to end? What specifically kind of had them push you out to the edge on that game?
Something happened with one of our defensive ends. I can't remember if it was an injury or I'm blanking right now if it was an injury or something else outside of football that happened where, he just wasn't able to play the first half of the game. I wasn't targeting, I know that, but he just wasn't able to play the first half of the game. I think
was it Trayvon Morris-Bryant? It may have been dropped. Wasn't he out for the injury for the first couple of games?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. He had a thing, as Gus likes to say, whenever somebody has a thing, right? And obviously that night we saw a lot of injuries on offense too, not the least of which was our quarterback Dylan Gabriel, who ends up being out for the rest of the season. As a defensive guy now, the offense has changed, right? Mikey Keene comes in, he's a true freshman, and Mikey certainly battled, but he's a true freshman. He's learning on the fly. How did the injuries on offense? Bowser gets dinged up in that game too. How did the injuries on offense change what you guys had to do on defense? Did that sort of make you all have to play different? Did you feel a little bit more pressure to say, okay, now the offense is going to be a little bit stagnant for a while. We got to kind of step our game up?
Yeah. So obviously, when you have a freshman coming as a quarterback, no one knows what to expect. Especially, your star running back goes out. We don't know what to expect with the second or third string. Obviously, they did great. They did what they could. Defensive wise, we knew okay, we kind of have to step it up, especially D-line. D-line were kind of, as a coach, and players, we were kind of prideful that, all right, we're kind of like big brothers of the team. I know the O-line kind of probably felt the same way as being as big brothers, that we had to step it up and kind of take over and show everybody, listen, we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine. Obviously stuff that it's football. Things are going to happen, so you just got to keep pressing forward. But, I think they did the best they can. Mikey Key came in and crushed everything, to be honest.
I mean, yeah, you guys held your own. I mean, the ECU game, the Tulane game, the Cows game late. I mean, we were holding teams under 20 for literally that whole second half of the season, right? I mean, you guys definitely stepped up. Not that you didn't play well in the first half, but it felt like there was a little extra energy once the quarterback change was made outside of Navy. We'll get to that in a second. It seemed like there was a little extra energy on the defensive side of the ball. Was that something, again, that you and KD and some of the leaders kind of said, hey, look, we got to do this thing. We got to protect the offense now.
Yeah, I mean, it was – the coaches even said to themselves that, we got to protect the offense. We got a freshman coming in, it's just hard. You don't know what to expect. We're brothers, but at the same time, it's can you perform? Which he did. Everybody did. They performed their best. So, once we got comfortable with, okay, yeah, he can perform, we still had that, the pressure was kind of released a little bit, but, we still played, as, being a protector, I guess, in a sense.
That 2021 year is the first year they have the free transfer. Anybody can come in and out. And Gus brings in some guys that he's coached before, Big Cat. And is there a feeling in the locker room oh, he's bringing in his guys? Was there a tough transition, or did that actually go kind of smoothly that year?
I feel like it went smoothly. Obviously, there's going to be, locker room talk where, if a coach brings in their guys, they're going to be okay, why are they doing that? But, especially in that position, I defensive end, not my position. I'm a defensive tackle. So I'm just worried about the guys in my room. I wasn't worried about Big Cat. I didn't mean that in a rude way, but he's not in my position. Defensive ends, obviously, some of them, they felt a little, a little concerned, but you're going to have guys transferring. Even if you go to the NFL, you're going to have guys traded in. They're going to try to take your position. You just got to perform. So, and I think as soon as, everybody heard that, they're you know what, you're right. It's not that big of a deal,
And then in that year, you mentioned him already a couple times, Kalia Davis goes down with that knee injury. Obviously, you're close with him. How hard was that to watch happen?
It sucked, obviously. I think that was game 4. Just watching it happen, you saw it when he couldn't get up. Me, Cam Good, and I think Keenan Hester, we were all kind of standing next to each other, and we all just, looked at each other, and we were all, we were sad that it happened. You never want that to happen, especially to a guy like him. He works hard. He wants to keep moving. He wants to do better. So just seeing that, and then, he's like I said, he's a beast. He was a key factor to our defense. Being the guy that can, create a new line of scrimmage. You don't get those guys very often. So having him kind of go out, it was a bit, it was an empty space there for a little bit, where everybody had to step up, but it's kind of hard to step up, when he set the bar so high.
Well, that season was unique too, because we actually saw that, because you guys were on a TV show that year. There was the Our Time TV special, cameras everywhere. Why didn't we see an Anthony Montalvo episode? We had a Kalia Davis episode. I didn't see an Anthony Montalvo episode. Where was your next one, or did you get cut? What happened? How'd you not get more feature, more FaceTime on that?
Honestly, I didn't watch it, so I have no clue. I didn't know if I was even in it. I saw all the cameras. I'm not a big camera guy. So I kind of, I was there. I was in and out. I didn't really show face as much to the camera as I should have. But I don't know. You got to talk to the director. I don't know who the director was at.
All right, well, I'll unearth that for you. But so season ends, we have a nice victory against the Gators, right? Obviously, in-state rival, two teams that don't play each other very often, if at all. Two fan bases who like to talk a bunch of trash to each other. How satisfying was that win, beating Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl in 2021?
It was honestly really satisfying, especially, when we got Twitter, we got social media now. Everybody was downing us. I don't want to say everybody. The UCF fans, they were in support. But, you have, some people on there that just didn't, believe we could win. So just proving them wrong was kind of like the biggest thing, especially when the players and some of the players were talking and we got that win. You can kind of look at them like, yeah, you can look at the scoreboard now, But they were all great guys, especially, football, you're going to talk trash, it's going to happen. But, they handled it well and, we walked away with a win. So it felt very satisfying to actually just look at the scoreboard and say, we're, I guess, quote unquote, the best team in Florida.
Well, what do you do as soon as that game ends? All of a sudden, we start hearing the excuses. We didn't have all our guys. We weren't motivated. What did you do as soon as you heard those excuses, like immediately after we win the game?
It kind of reminded me of like the BYU situation when we lost to BYU. These fans are gonna make excuses where hey, we didn't have our guys. They weren't motivated to play. It's football. Like it's just you got to really just watch the film. You can't just sit there and try to make excuses for it. We won. That's the end of the story. There's nothing else to, kind of tell. Obviously, we could have did things better. They could have did things better. But that's in the past. So there's really not much to really talk about.
All right. So after that game, you have a decision to make based on the COVID situation, which the one, I guess, positive is, have an option to come back for a sixth season at UCF, and you decide to do that. What went into that decision for you to come back to UCF this past season?
That was just me, like, kind of looking around. I wanted to try to go to the NFL draft, but I just felt like I didn't produce enough. I feel like I didn't have enough film to kind of tell the coaches, the scouts, like, hey, look at me. I think that was the biggest decision or the biggest factor was that I felt personally I didn't kind of live up to my standards or, be able to tell the scouts, like, I can play in the NFL level. So that's the reason I just wanted to come back and, give it one more shot. I'm on scholarship, so it's kind of free, to kind of come back and just give it a shot again.
So what were your goals then coming into the season? What did you want to try to achieve to help get you to that spot where you felt like you had the right tape to be able to go back to NFL scouts?
So Coach Martin, he's big on statistics, big on, production. He kind of had us go on the board. We had a picture on the board and we went underneath of it and we kind of had, like, I want to say 3 major things and one key objective that we needed. So mine was just, hand placement, foot drive, and then, production, just having the numbers. So that was the biggest 3 things that I had on there. And knockback. That was another big thing that I had on there. So, throughout, our film session, he would kind of keep going back and forth. Like, this is what you said at the beginning of the season you wanted to do when you came back. And this is what you look like on film. So
how'd you grade out on that at the end of the year?
I felt like, I did decent. I had I don't know how many tackles I ended with this season. I know it was more than last year. So I felt like I did decent tackling wise. Sacks, obviously, I wasn't up there with sacks or tackle for losses, so that's the biggest thing. But I felt like it was an okay year. I still have a lot to work on. So just hoping that I can get better in the next couple weeks before pro day, just to show the coaches. So
the biggest thing going into this past season, everybody was talking about, was the quarterback battle. Now, in the preseason, you were playing against these guys in practice every day. We're hearing reports out of practice from different guys who they think looks better. In your opinion, who do you think should have been the starting quarterback to start the year?
That's hard. That's a hard one because, John Rice Plum, he can run. He can move. He's athletic. Obviously, I think Mikey Keene, he just was able to throw the ball. He was able to understand the offense a little bit and just able to kind of, dime up the receivers just a little better. So if you want a quarterback that can move, you want John. I think Mikey got more confident with his legs as the, year went on, which was great for him. And I felt like John also improved on his accuracy. So it just depends on what you want. Me personally, with the year we had, I felt like it could have been a right decision. But I was kind of a big fan of Mikey. I wanted him to kind of get that starting spot, especially what he went through, coming in after DG and performing. I felt like he, got better. He could have did, I don't want to say better, but he could have did his, thing out there, with us. So.
Yeah, I mean, the games we lost, you look at, and the games that he came in and he won for us. I mean, a lot of people have the same opinion. And the beginning of the season, okay, we lose the game to Louisville at the beginning. Then we go on we're playing pretty good football, and then East Carolina comes around, and you mentioned before that Tulsa didn't have our playbook, but there was a rumor about East Carolina. How did they beat us so badly? And did you hear the same rumors? Is that true? Did they have our playbook?
I've heard the rumor. I don't know if it's true. I hope it's not true. You know what I mean? You never want that to happen, especially from a guy coming from the inside, just to give them the playbook. I don't know if it's true. I honestly wish I knew. You know what I mean? Just, kind of, help me out, especially if it's defense.
I can give you an update on this one. So we had Ryan Swoboda on the show like a month ago, and he said he was at the Senior Bowl, the NFLPA Bowl, with some East Carolina guys, including Holt Nailers, and that they swore to him they didn't have our playbook. So if Ryan Swoboda is a trusted source in your mind, he says that he was told they did not have the playbook. If you want to believe that, I don't know, but that's what Swoboda was told.
I mean, listen, I believe it. It's coming from Ryan Swoboda. He's gonna, he's much bigger
than both of us combined, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they didn't have that playbook, they just, they schemed us up really well. And I was talking to Coach Martin about it, and some of the defensive coaches, and looking at the game, they did really well with the halftime adjustments. They did really well scheming us in the first quarter. They took the D tackles, out of the game completely. So, especially, when we got tired, they tried to run up the middle. It worked here and there. Sometimes it didn't work, but, I think they did really well, especially on, their defensive side of the ball. I mean, they played outstanding on the defense side. So, you got to give them props for doing that.
Well, after that, we roll off 3 nice wins: Cincinnati, Memphis, and Tulane. We went at 2 Tulane, obviously, and I think people thought they were gonna beat us. I think they were 17, we were 22 at the time, so it was a quote unquote upset. You mentioned Cincinnati earlier. They had your number the last couple of years, right? You beat them in 17 and 18, but they got you in 19, 20, and 21. Of those 3 games, which one of those wins was the most satisfying for you?
Shoot, probably Cincy.
Yeah.
I just, nothing against Cincy. I just enjoy beating Cincy. You know what I mean? Especially since, they beat me 3 years in a row, I really wanted to win against Cincy. So, that's the biggest thing.
You can tell us now. You were annoyed by that Luke Fickell shirt that said team on the back, right? That was annoying to you as well?
What shirt?
Luke Fickell always had a shirt that said team on the back. Whenever he was walking the sideline, that was his big thing. His shirt always said team, TEAM, together everyone achieves more. That annoyed you or no?
I honestly didn't see it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, it annoyed me. And then what also annoyed me, Anthony, then is the next game we have Navy, right? And I get Navy is a unique team. They run a unique offense. It was an 11 a.m. start time, which is probably a little bit different for everybody. How difficult is it to play Navy? They got us 2 years in a row, and in this one, it seemed like they were just able to move the ball on offense. How difficult is it as a defensive guy, particularly as a lineman, because you're going to be in there now, right? How difficult is it to prepare for Navy?
It's simple, not easy. It's all about discipline. Navy's all about discipline. They're a triple option team. You know what I mean? They have different ways to run the ball. As a D lineman, we just had to prepare for the cut blocks. I mean, I got cut so many times, especially my first time playing Navy. I think I got cut 14 times where I was on the ground. The second year, I was a little more prepared because I understood the speed. I understood how they're going to cut block. So it's a little bit better. But, it's just hard. I mean, as a defensive lineman, there's only so much I can do, only so much we can do, especially if they get a good cut block on us, that's a seam right there. So it's just it's hard to really play them. It may look easy, you know what I mean? Let's just to defeat the cut block, squeeze down the line, you can make the tackle. When that guy is torpedoing his helmet at your knee and he gets the right angle and you go flying, there's nothing you can really do but try to get up as fast as you can. So, I know the rules the cut block rules kind of changed where it could only be inside the box. So that changed, obviously, that 2020 year, or was it 2021 year when we played them, they can actually cut outside the box. So that was a big factor for our DBs and linebackers.
So how I mean, again, we have everything in front of us, right? We're coming off a nice win against Tulane. Basically, we win, and we are in the New Year's Six game right at that point, right? We are the inside track. Your last year at UCF, you've been fighting hard to get back to the mountaintop. How pissed off were you after that game? Kind of realizing, or I guess when did it hit you that you were like, oh my goodness, like we were right there, and it's now it's going to be a lot harder. When did that kind of hit you, and how pissed off did that sort of make you?
You talking about after the Tulane game?
After the Navy game.
After the Navy game, I mean, losing always sucks. I know like after the Navy game, we lost. We still had some hope. Obviously, if certain teams lost, I think it was I think it had to be between Cincy and Tulane. I think it was right, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it sucked. Obviously, I mean, I know after the Navy game, like a lot of guys were emotional. I was emotional. I mean, losing. It's 11 a.m. Start, so we got done maybe at like 1:30. So I had all day to kind of sit there and contemplate.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
that was the worst thing. Like if it was later at night, I think I probably would have got over it a little bit faster. But since I had all day, I was just kind of laying in my room hurting. My knees hurting from getting cut so much, and then like they kind of lost. I mean, they're a great team. They're very disciplined, but losing and then getting off that New York, bowl game, it's hard to kind of explain. You know what I mean?
Did that 11 a.m. start have anything to do with it? I know it was a really early time. Did it have any factor at all, do you think?
It might have. You know what I mean? I was making jokes with my coaches and jokes with the players. You know what I mean? Like it was 11 a.m. Which we're not used to, but those guys are jumping off a plane at 6 a.m. in the morning. They're kind of ready for it every day. Obviously that's probably not what they're doing, but we kind of make jokes like that just to lighten up the mood. But it could have played a factor into it.
Well, we still had everything in front of us. Even with the loss, it wasn't going to be at home, but we played in the championship game anyway in Tulane. You kind of mentioned it. I mean, I know you said you wanted Mikey to be the quarterback. He didn't show up for that game. I mean, some guys say they understand the decision, this and that. To me, it's a championship game. I think he should be playing. What do you think about that?
I really don't know. Like college is becoming more of a business. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of adopting the NFL ways, so it's kind of hard to kind of wrap my mind around it sometimes. It's confusing what people are thinking. I really didn't talk to Mikey too much. I mean, we had our interactions in the locker room and that was it. We kept it simple. So I wasn't like, a really close friend with him. You would probably have to go talk to somebody that was really close to him to understand what he was thinking at the time. But, I think that was his red shirt, right? Yep. If he would have played, he would have burned his red shirt. So, this is my opinion. If I'm, not really playing this year and we're at the championship game, it's the last game, I mean? Like I would want to play, but if my coach is kind of telling me like, hey, we're probably not going to put you in, then, there's no point in kind of dressing out. You can just kind of sitting there, doing nothing and just looking pretty. But I don't know what the conversation was between him and Gus. Don't know what the conversation was, what he was kind of thinking. So yeah, I wish I knew, but, things happen, I mean? So I guess it worked out for the best for him now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, I mean, so we didn't play our best game against Navy. We started out great against South Florida, and then we saw how that game, and it comes down to the wire. We don't play great against Tulane in the championship game. And then we go play Duke in the bowl game, and it seemed like another kind of a letdown game. What kind of happened there at the end of the year? Was it just injuries? Was it just guys, worn down? Or why did the season end kind of just with a thud, really?
The season, it's kind of hard to end the season off, really well. I mean? You have so many games where guys are beat up, they're injured, it gets kind of shaky towards the end, and you really have to push through as a team and as a person. You get tired, I mean? Like, stuff happens. I think that's probably what kind of played in is that, some players, some people, some coaches, some things just got tiring, mentally exhausting. Duke was, they're a really good team. I mean, that right tackle, like he's an NFL caliber tackle. So it's kind of hard. They played really well. They were really experienced in the O-line wise. But, I don't know. I mean? I guess they just prepared very well, better than we did, for the bowl game. USF always comes down for some reason to the wire. I don't know why. I mean? Even though we're kind of the better team, you know, I want to say kind of, we are the better team. It always comes down to the wire. I don't know why. It's a rivalry, so everybody's amped up. You know, mistakes happen when you're amped up like that. You know, great plays happen when you're amped up like that. You know what I mean? So it just, I don't know. It's hard to explain that one.
There was a couple of years we beat them by 4 touchdowns. In 18 and 19, we beat them, you know, pretty handily. But yeah 20, 21, 20, they've all been close.
Yeah.
But what was it like for you after the bowl game, taking the jersey off for the last time? You know, this is it. There's no 7th year, right? You can't come back again.
It was emotional. Especially like I didn't want to lose, you know, leaving out, you know what I mean? I kind of was, you know, pissy on the sidelines, you know, when they just, you know, kept scoring and we couldn't really do anything on offense. You know what I mean? You know, I had a couple of D linemen, you know, the young guys come up to me and they were apologizing. You know what I mean? Like, hey, sorry that we couldn't do this for you. It wasn't, you know, necessarily their fault or the coach's fault. I had the coaches do the same thing because Gus came up to me and apologized. You know, a lot of the older guys were, you know, we were kind of pissed off in a sense, you know what I mean, emotional. And then it hits you in the locker room where you're taking off your shoulder pads for the last time. Like, well, you know, I went out on a loss, which sucks. But now, it's on to, you know, the next kind of chapter. And kind of looking around the locker room and seeing, like, you know, all the guys that you've been, you know, practicing with, you know, messing around with and stuff like that, you know, just having fun with is, you know, kind of dissipating, you know, in a sense where it's kind of vanishing, where, you know, now it's time to move on to being, you know, individualized.
Well, you mentioned it's college football. It's 2022. There's no shortage of change, of weird things happening. How surprised were you, or maybe not at all, I don't know, when you saw some of your teammates transferring out, right? You saw a bunch of guys decide to hop in the portal. Obviously, on offense, you lose Ryan O'Keefe. We kind of knew Mikey was going. Defense, JJB goes. Brown goes, right? And then the surprise of everybody, Matt Lee decides to leave as well. How surprised were you as you kind of hear your teammates' names in the portal? Or you don't have to name the guy if you don't want to. Or were you kind of like, oh, yeah, I kind of knew that was coming. Or, oh, yeah, I kind of figured that was coming. Like, are they surprises for you just like they're surprises for us?
Some of them, yeah. You know, like, I'm not going to lie, Matt Lee was that was a surprise. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't expecting that. You know what I mean? You know, he's a great center, you know, and so I don't know what happened there. But other guys, you know, it was kind of like, you know, foretold that they were going to transfer, you know what I mean? Especially on the defensive side of the ball. Like, we knew who was going to transfer. You know, there's locker room talk, you know what I mean? We're all close. So, you know, we all talk to each other either about transferring or stuff like that. So, you know, as, you know, football is kind of like an emotional game. You know what I mean? Especially when you grow, you know, close to somebody, you know what I mean? Like, you just open up to them, you're able to talk. So we knew who was going to transfer at certain points in time.
How hard is that though? Like, you know, a guy you're playing with is like, hey man, after this year, I'm out of here. How do you like deal with that? Is it something where you respect their decision, or are you kind of like, hey man, don't do that, stay here with us? Like, do you kind of go into, hey man, no, you got to be here? Like, how do you handle when you kind of hear a guy say, hey, I think this is it for me?
I mean, you kind of respect their decision, you know what I mean? So certain people, you know, you can kind of talk to and be like, hey, like, why are you leaving? You know what I mean? Like, let's try to figure it out a little bit. But certain guys, you're just like, you know, I understand your decision. I understand why you're leaving. You know, I wish you the best. And you just watch them, you know, transfer. It just depends on the person. You know what I mean? It's not based on the skill level. You know what I mean? It's literally just depends on the person. You know, sometimes you can see, like, you know what, I would be in the same shoe. I would do the same thing you're doing if I was in your shoes. So.
What are the common reasons that you hear? You don't have to name anybody's name specifically, but, you know, is it NIL money, right? Is obviously that's an opportunity now. Is it playing time? Is it scheme? Is it trying to maybe get to a bigger stage to get your name out there? What are kind of the common reasons you hear from guys when they say they're leaving?
So, I mean, it just depends. I mean, NIL, that's playing a factor now. You know, you kind of, you know, wouldn't expect that, but, you know, it's playing a factor now where guys are transferring just because they're getting some NILs. Like you said, it is scheme. You know, they just don't like the scheme. They may, you know, it could be they don't like the players. You know, it could be that I've heard other reasons where, you know, people have to go back home just because, you know, either their mom or dad or something's going on in their family. They just have to go back home and they're transferring closer to their home just to be with their family. You know, so there's a lot of reasons that people transfer. Sometimes they just transfer just because they feel they don't fit in the system. They feel kind of like an outcast. You know what I mean? So there's so many reasons, you know what I mean, now that why people transfer, and especially with the new rule that was set in where you could just come in immediately, it just kind of opened up more opportunities for people.
One other change, obviously, that you know really well, so I'm curious to get your take on this. Obviously, Travis Williams moves on, goes to Arkansas. Addison Williams now becomes defensive coordinator. Obviously, he was on staff. He was on the defensive staff. What can we expect? What can you tell us about Addison Williams? Do you expect him to do anything differently on defense than you saw from Travis Williams?
Yeah, he's his own person, you know what I mean? So I think he's gonna do really well in this upcoming, season. He was a big schemer, you know what I mean? Like he knows how to scheme the ball. Same thing with, Travis, Coach Williams. I don't want to call him by his first name. But I think we can expect a little more, coming out of the DB room, especially with him being a DB coach. I feel like he might be a little bit more oriented around the DB room, but he understands D-line. So I feel like he might be able to kind of give certain calls that will help with the D-line. So I feel like it's going to be a good year for them, and some trickery might be happening, on the defensive side. I haven't seen the playbook, I only got to experience, with Duke just a little bit, so I think they'll do well.
Are we going to get back to the let your nuts hang defense? You think, or are we keeping our nuts in? What do you think?
I think he could get there. Especially
Okay.
with the line he has now, the linebackers he's getting, the DBs that are transferring and stuff like that. I think we could kind of rotate back to that.
When you hear hype, obviously you saw a little bit. When a weird rule, I didn't know it was even a thing. By the way, John Walker, who was obviously a signee, actually practiced with you all. I didn't know that was a rule apparently, but hey, what are you gonna do? Obviously, you're a D lineman. You got to play a little bit with him. Everyone says he's obviously a really talented kid. What did you see out of your time when you had a chance to practice with John Walker?
I didn't know that was a rule until he showed up to practice, and I was like, I'm kind of confused. You know what I mean? I was like,
hey, who's the new guy?
He is very skilled. Like we were doing some drills and just watching him, like he's very explosive. He has great hands. He has a great first punch. So he's going to be, a kind of a game changer, him and Ricky Barber in there. I think those two are going to be real, and same thing with Lee and Matt. Those guys, being under Coach Martin and having time, I think the D-line is going to be a game changer this year.
Anthony, what's next for you? You've been in college for 6 years. First of all, what did you study? Did you get your master's? What degree are we on? Are you a doctor now? And what are your plans now?
I wish I was a doctor, but no. I got my master's in interdisciplinary studies, which allowed me to grab kinesiology and entrepreneurship and form them into kind of one major. My undergrad was sports and exercise science.
Cool. So are you planning right now? You're still working towards the draft? Is that the plan? And then
right. I'm training back at UCF actually with one of the strength coaches, and just training for pro day on March 29th, and taking a shot there, and just seeing what happens.
All right.
You got any feedback from scouts? Anybody who's kind of seen your tape yet? Anything that you're kind of hearing about so far the draft process for you?
As like during my training, no, I haven't really heard too much. I know during the season, I had little chirps here and there. Certain teams either asking about my name or who am I. I know I had an XFL team, AFL team, NFL team that, kind of just was just wondering who I was and, stuff like that. But nothing like solid enough to really say, honestly.
Is that on the table? So if XFL or USFL calls, is that something that's on the table for you that you'd consider playing in one of those leagues?
For sure. I love playing football. You know what I mean? Like if they give me a chance, I'll go play for them. You know what I mean? If NFL doesn't work out, you have the other leagues. I would love to go play over there. You know what I mean? So I'm open to kind of, everything. I'm not
you might want to suit up. The Guardians are pretty bad in the XFL. They could probably use you right now, Anthony. I don't know if you got pads nearby, but you may want to make a drive down to Camping World. I think they need some help down there.
You're not the first person that's told me that. I was actually training with my coach, and he kind of told me the same thing. And, I might text my agent and let him know, like, hey, if the XFL needs to, a D lineman right here.
Get a couple of weeks of game checks, right? Go try out for the NFL. It seems like a win-win for you. But you've been really generous with your time. But we have to wrap up things here with our usual style, which is rapid fire questions. Could be random questions about music, movies, sports, food. You never know what you're gonna get, right? So here's my first one for you. If UCF football last year was going to put on a talent show and you had to perform, what would you do? What would your talent be in the talent show?
Dang. I would try to dance. I think I would try to dance. I can't dance. So it'd be more of like a funny skit. You know what I mean? Like I would just try to make them, laugh. But what
kind of dance are we doing? The sprinkler? What are we doing here?
I don't know. Sprinkler, crayon. I'm pulling out everything in the books. Everything I can.
Was it Coach Hand who did the worm in the meeting room?
He did it pretty well, yeah. So,
okay.
But I could try.
That's a high bar. If you lose to Coach Hand, I'm just telling you, it feels like a high bar. You might want to pick another dance. That's all I'm saying.
All right, you mentioned you're a New York guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Baseball season starting now. What's your team, Yankees or Mets?
Oh man, I'm not a big baseball fan. I'd rather play it than watch it. Honestly, I'm kind of like that with all sports. I would have to say Yankees though.
What about football? Did you grow up as a Giants fan, Jets fan?
Yeah, Giants fan. Giants fan.
All right, you're just like me. I'm a Yankees Giants guy too.
Okay, there you go.
Right answers. All right, Anthony, we got to see you a lot this year. You were at a lot of press conferences. You got to go out and talk to the media a bunch. How many times did you lie at press conference? Because they ask you questions and you can't give the answer, right? So how many times did you have to lie this year at the press conference?
I couldn't tell you how many times I had to count. I mean, I wouldn't say I would lie fully. Maybe I extended the truth or twisted the truth just a little bit, or kind of like beat around the bush. But it was a handful of times that I had to.
Now, do you know that coming in? Like, okay, they're gonna do you rehearse this stuff? Like, hey, you're gonna ask me about the quarterback, so I got to be like, hey, both guys are looking great. We really want to like, do you rehearse it going in like the day before? You're like, oh man, I got press for tomorrow. Do you try to rehearse your answers?
No, there's no really rehearsal. I mean, if there is like whether it's an injury or like the quarterbacks, they might tell you, hey, listen, they're probably gonna ask you this. Just prepare your answer for anything. But that's pretty much it. But sometimes, questions can throw you off, you know what I mean? And I kind of, just had to beat around the bush just a little bit and make it sound, pretty, you know what I mean? Because, I want to
What's the worst thing that would happen though? Let's say Trey Strelko was like, hey, Anthony, quarterback this week, who's starting? You're like, yeah, Mikey Keene. Like, would you have been in trouble? Would you have been benched? Like, what's the worst that would have happened if you gave the truth?
I mean, the worst that could happen is probably me not being seen at press conferences.
Which could be a win-win for you, right? It could be a win-win, right?
It could be a win-win. If you want to get your name out there, you have to be at press conferences and stuff like that. But if you tell the truth or you're just too quick with it, sometimes they may look at you like, yeah, we're not using him anymore.
Okay, that explains a lot, by the way.
All right, we mentioned you played under 3 head coaches: Frost, Heupel, Gus. You know the game. F, marry, kill. Let's call it bench, start, cut. Who you benching, who you starting, who you cutting?
Bench, start, cut. Oh, man.
Yikes.
All right, I'm starting Coach Frost. I'm benching Coach Heupel. And I'm going to have to cut Coach Malzahn.
Oh.
Luckily, we didn't get the press conference lies right there. Okay, Anthony, I did my research. That 2019 D-line team, there were 5 freshmen: Devontae Bryant, Ike Walker, Randy Charlton, Landon Woodson, Tyrese Black. Landon Woodson's like an altar boy. There's no way he was getting in trouble. So I'm taking him out of the running right now. The other four I don't know really well. I'm gonna go Randy Charlton was the one getting in trouble. You don't have to answer or confirm. I'm gonna go Randy Charlton was the troublemaker.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't. Okay. He was a class clown. You know what I mean? He was a funny guy. But when it was time to work, he was there. And when I say getting in trouble, it wasn't anything bad. Obviously,
yeah, sure.
It was messing around, having fun. As a freshman, and, Devontae Bryant was the same thing. He was a basketball guy. Those guys are just funny. You know what I mean? They weren't bad kids. They didn't do anything stupid or get into any fights or anything like that. It was just kind of, where, in the classroom where, they might maybe talking a little too much. That's it,
All I knew is it wasn't Landon Woodson because I was DMing with Landon recently. He was going to come on the show, and he was like, hey, I can't make it the next couple of weeks. I started a new job, and I want to make sure I do a really good job and have a good impression. And I was like, there's no way this guy was goofing off in any meeting room if he's taking his job that seriously.
I mean, you'll be surprised. Landon is full of surprises. Landon is full of surprises.
Okay. All right. You know what? If he comes on, I'm going to tell him that Montalvo said he was full of surprises. Let's see what we get.
All right. I think we're going to put this video out too, but for most people listening, they're just listening on the podcast. They don't see what I'm looking at right now. This guy is built like the freaking Michelin man. Your shoulders are ginormous. What's your favorite lift in the weight room? What is your favorite exercise to do?
Now, I would have to say I'm starting to find a love for squats. Before it used to be bench press. I used to love bench pressing, but now I'm kind of finding my way around the squat bar. So
I need numbers. What are you putting up on the bench? What are you putting up with squat?
Shoot, man, we don't really max out too much, but the last time I went on bench or I tried to max out, I did 405 pretty easily on bench. Now I'm not sure what I can do. Squat, I'm probably maybe 500, 525. You know what I mean? We don't right now for like our training is all velocity based, so it's not too heavy. It's just moving the bar quickly.
But for the pro day, do you guys have to do the 225 for how many reps? How many times do you do 225?
I hit it last time with 25. Not really happy with that. I wanted to try to hit it for 30.
All right.
That's enough. I said on the intro, Anthony, you played like multiple games with a full club on your hand. They literally like put a cast over your entire hand. How does one play defensive line, defensive tackle, battling all the with like a club? Is it a weapon at that point? Like how do you function with a club?
It can be. I learned to make it a weapon. It kind of gave me a little bit more of extension. You know what I mean? Just because it kind of bulged out. My hand was in a fist. So the padding bulged out a little bit. So it gave me a couple inches to press the offensive lineman off me, especially when their hands are on me and they got me locked up. I can use it to kind of smack it down. There's padding that's over it, the cast. So it's not solid. It is soft, but it does still hurt sometimes when you hit them in the right area.
Did you ever want to take a swing at one of your teammates with that thing in practice? Did you wear it during practice? And if so, was Swoboda ever going to catch a right hook from you in the neck there with the ball cast there?
Me and Swoboda would always mess around. You know what I mean? He would always try to grab the club, as I'm trying to go past him. So sometimes, I did kind of want to, hit him over the head with it just a little bit. I just wanted to see if I could break the cast if I hit somebody with it. So that was it,
Fair enough.
All right, my daughter's trying to get me to take her to a Taylor Swift concert in a couple months. Are you a Swiftie? How many Taylor Swift songs can you name right now off the top of your head?
Not a Taylor Swift fan. Probably couldn't name any, to be honest. I mean, I probably heard a lot. I just not a very big Taylor Swift fan.
All right.
What's your pregame music of choice? The music that you would listen to get yourself ready for a game?
Last year I tried doing like hip hop and rap. This year was more rock music. So you had Chop Suey, Papa Roach, Disturbed, stuff like that.
Wow, dark places. I like that. I like that.
All right, going back to New York. First of all, when did you were there all through high school? Yeah.
No. So I moved to Long Island when I was 3.
And that's it. So you've been after that. Where'd you live?
Tampa.
Oh, so you're not even that much of a New York guy. I was going to ask you about your favorite pizza places.
My family lived there most of their life. After 9/11 happened, we moved to Tampa. So.
Okay. All right. Well, forget my pizza questions. Well, give me a food recommendation over in Tampa. Where's your hangout spot over there?
Oh man, I mean, high school was Steak and Shake. After every game, we went to Steak and Shake and just got a milkshake and some burgers. You know what I mean? There is an all-you-can-eat sushi place in Tampa that I just recently went to, and that was honestly really good. I can't remember the name. My girl took me there. She's a big sushi fan. If I can find the name, I will definitely text you the name, though.
All right, we'll take it. All right, anyone who's ever attended UCF knows that parking is not always fun at UCF, and the parking patrol is out there. So if I set the number at 4.5 over under parking tickets from Anthony Montalvo, I'm going to take the over. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. I think I had – I didn't have as many. I'll say maybe 7 at most. My 6 year, 7.
How did it keep happening? Were we in the same spot every time? Like, walk me through how you kept getting the ticket.
I would go to different spots, and they would just find me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they would always go during times where I'm at practice. You know what I mean? I know there was one time where I was walking to my car, and they were walking next to me and gave me a ticket as I was getting to my car. And I was like, I'm about to move. Like, just give me a second, So you just can't escape them.
That's pretty ballsy. You're a pretty big fella, like Mike mentioned. That's a pretty ballsy move by the parking patrol. I think I'd let you skate on that one if that was me.
Yeah, they saw it, and they were like, yeah, you don't have a parking pass, or you're parked in the wrong area. You got to get a ticket. I'm not a very controversial guy. I'm not gonna try to do anything. So I accepted it. I paid the ticket. So
that doesn't happen to Mackenzie Milton, right? Nobody's giving him a ticket.
I don't know. They probably got him a couple times. Like they don't care who you are. They're there to give you a ticket.
Oh. All right. Superpower. If you had to pick one, what would it be?
Super strength. I've always loved the Hulk.
You're already super strength. And we already talked about the numbers.
I mean, those are average numbers for, I wouldn't even say average. You got Aaron Donald, you got other guys that are doing so much more than, what I'm doing. So for me, it would definitely be like super strength.
All right, last one for you. Name one guy in the team that you could absolutely beat in a foot race. In a 40-yard dash, who's one guy that you're dusting every single time?
Ooh, do I want to go? Do I want to start something, or do I want to actually because I always compete with Sam Jackson, and I want to say Sam Jackson, but I heard he got a lot faster, doing his pro day training. So I'm kind of iffy now.
Okay. So you want to call him out, but you kind of don't want to call. All right. So it's a light call out, maybe Sam Jackson. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there somebody or anybody else that you can beat? Like, you don't even have to train. You can just get out there right now, and you're always going to be faster than that person.
Josh Cox. I can beat him anytime. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not even gonna say anything. I'm just gonna keep it at that.
What about like the kickers and punters? You can't beat Colton Boomer?
I ain't gonna lie, he's pretty fast. I didn't realize how fast he was until he did a fake, and I saw him running around the corner. I'm like, I don't know if I can catch him right now.
Okay.
He looks like he'd be quick. Yeah,
he's got some. He's got the other, Alex Vory, the long snapper. I've been training with him. He's gotten a lot faster. I'm trying to think of the other Andrew Osteen. I can definitely beat. He's actually in the 5.10.5. No, maybe in a 40 in long distance. I could probably get him, but he has some acceleration to him.
I like how you've thought this out and you've prepared an answer on who you may or may not want to call out. Anthony, man, we appreciate you hopping. I know it's been about an hour or so here. So thanks for being generous with your time. Thanks for spending some time walking down memory lane with us. Definitely enjoyed your career at UCF, man. So glad that you wore the black and gold and that we all share a degree from the same place. You've been a great representative for Night Nation, man. And I know a bunch of people are rooting for you. Hopefully to do well in your pro day and get an opportunity at the next level, whatever that looks like for you. So if not, hopefully we'll see you around campus. Maybe we'll see you around for a couple of games in the next couple of years, man. But thanks a lot for hopping in, man. Be well and go Knights.
Thank you. Go Knights. Charge on.